Hey, it's Alex Ralka from Board Game Co. And today we're doing a Patreon requested video. Once a month I have my Patreons literally choose a topic for me to go over. Not vote on one, but literally pick one. And the last one they picked was top 10 Kickstarters you shouldn't have backed. Now, if you've watched my videos before, you know that I don't like to do things the obvious way. I don't like to sit there and pick 10 versions of Unbroken, 10 obvious fails as to why this is a game you shouldn't have backed because of all the drama that is associated with this game. And no, apologies to Artem Safarov, who is the designer of Unbroken, who had a great game that just the complete train wreck by Golden Bell Studios. But I'm digressing because Unbroken is not one of my 10. I enjoy bringing something a little different to the conversation. I enjoy tackling things that are a little bit more, well, not obvious, I guess, to put it differently. And for each of these 10 Kickstarters, many of which I have backed, I'm going to go through why you shouldn't have backed it, and then why I did, if or when I did. And not all of them I did, but I'll cover why, because sometimes Kickstarter is an interesting place. There are many reasons to back things, not to back things, any number of different explanations that we can go through and whatnot. And let's start off with the big one. Let's start off with Frosthaven. You should never have backed Frosthaven. But more specifically, I'm not even going to go into the value. And I did a whole video on Frosthaven. While I think the value was okay, while I think this was a game that you really just could have waited and probably gotten it just as, same price down the road, wait for it to be on sale on Amazon, who knows what. But really, the real reason you shouldn't have backed Frosthaven is because did you even finish Gloomhaven? Did you finish Gloomhaven? Did you finish Jaws of the Lion? Or is Frosthaven just another game that had to go on your shelf? Just another expansion, but more content for a game you never finished? Because the amount of people who went through 2 scenarios in Gloomhaven, went through 10 scenarios in Gloomhaven, and said, I need Frosthaven, it is more, it is better, it is the same. I mean, you shouldn't have backed Frosthaven. Why did you back this game? Or did you actually finish Gloomhaven? And yes, there will be some who did, by the way. But think about this. We have, 7 million people? I don't remember the number. We have 83, not 7 million, I don't know how I said that. 7 million, whatever. 83,000 backers to Frosthaven. How many of them do you think actually finished the game? And this is equally true for 7th Citadel, which is, on Kickstarter right now, that I just did a review for it. But sometimes you just don't need another game because the amount of content on the table, the amount of content you already have for the same exact system, are those tweaks really worth it? Why are you backing a game that is just going to join your unplayed games on the shelf? And what did you do with Gloomhaven? Are you still playing that? Are you ready to get rid of it? So Frosthaven, specifically because of the idea that you already have more than enough content, is the first Kickstarter you shouldn't have backed. And from there we move to Wolfenstein the board game by Arkane Studio. And this one is going to be a little bit more in that traditional vein of an actual critique, but Arkane Studio, famous for, well, a bunch of games that sadly didn't do well, from Reload to Vanguard of War, games with gorgeous miniatures. I think they had a Studio something X, Chronicle X as well. Games with amazing miniatures, games that look incredible, but the components are subpar, the gameplay is subpar, the reviews were mixed at best, the debate as to whether they're just copies of existing other games is iffy. So why would you back Wolfenstein the board game? Do you really believe that this is the game in which they've changed? Do you really believe that this is the game with 5,000 backers and $713,000 raised? Is this when Arkane turned it around and did a better job with their games? Now, while I didn't back this, I was on the fence, and part of that is because of The King of Average. The King of Average is a YouTube channel that is known very much for, however much I'm known for in some way giving my opinion, The King of Average really gives his opinion. And the fact that Arkane Studios sent him their game, the fact that he went over their game and he's very critiquing of anything that is not up to snuff. Now, he did give all the reasons why you should have backed it, why this actually might be the game that they changed with. So, Arkane Studios Wolfenstein the board game specifically, is a game that is a risk to back. It is taking a judgment call that Arkane Studios has finally managed to put out a game that actually holds up in all elements, from gameplay, from design, from not just the miniatures, but also the components and cards and tokens and everything else. And that's a risk. It's certainly a risk. It's one that's worth looking into, but it's certainly a risk, and it's why maybe, just maybe, you shouldn't have backed Wolfenstein the board game. From there we have Nemesis Lockdown. I'm pulling out the big guns here. I'm just going for the big guys. Nemesis Lockdown is an incredible experience. It is. I haven't actually played it, but supposedly. It's supposedly it's a great game. Supposedly it's an incredible experience. Supposedly it is half gameplay and half story. Half the time where you're like, and remember the time where I had my alien over here and I tried to make my way to the ship and then you launched in the escape pod and we got out. That is incredible. But even at its base pledge, even at the cheapest you can get it, you're talking about spending $140, $150 with shipping to get this experience. And that can go all the way up. I did a pledge manager video on Nemesis. That price tag can go all the way up to many thousands of dollars on the high end, and even $700 on the not even so high. $700 just for like an all-in without even going completely crazy. That is a lot of money if you want just a story. What you should have done instead is you should have backed Cosmic Encounter. You should have bought Cosmic Encounter. If you like the idea of good mechanics but better story, Cosmic Encounter delivers in spades. Cosmic Encounter, for the grand total of like $40, will give you that element, will give you that story-driven. And remember the time that we were negotiating to the win and then you blew up my planet, taking us out, and then I sat there and I offered the trade, and we both sat there and we paid a negotiated card at once, and then we came in for the win together? Cosmic Encounter will give you that story, will give you those experiences, but for a whole lot less than $700, for a whole lot less than $150 even. If you are interested in Nemesis, you're paying a very hefty price tag for what ultimately seems to be a pretty good game, but a better story-driven experience, a better journey, a better fun moment in time. And that's a lot of money. And it will hold its value, by the way. I did a pretty simple video on this where I basically say go ahead and back it. So there's any number of reasons to back it. And from this list, this is the first one that I have actually backed. But it's just a lot of money for the experience you're getting compared to what other things you can possibly do. And speaking of spending a lot of money for an experience and other things you could possibly do, we have Monumental African Empires, or just Monumental, pick whichever one, either the original Kickstarter or the sequel, whatever it is. This is another one which I backed. But it's basically $300 for Dominion. $300 for a deck builder. That's what it is. This game is deluxified past any reasonable need that it has to be deluxified. This is a game where they gave you gorgeous miniatures, some of the best miniatures I have ever seen. And then they put it behind a simplified deck builder. Dominion legitimately gives you the experience Monumental does. Different, to be sure, but that element of strategy, that element of building a deck, that element of taking it out to win, if you're looking for a gameplay experience above all, Dominion does just as good a job in a slightly different vein. Or pick any other deck builder. Pick whatever deck builder suits your core. You want to play Quest for El Dorado? Totally different game, but also deck building. Monumental is a deluxified, over-the-top production of a pretty simple experience. But those miniatures, they're pretty. They're very pretty. They're definitely miniatures I want. This is a gameplay, that experience that I want expanded on. And so yeah, I backed it. But I'm paying a lot of money for an experience that probably isn't relative to what you're getting out of it. And next up from there we have Horizon Zero Dawn. Horizon Zero Dawn is another one kind of in the vein of Wolfenstein, of Arkane Studios. This is from Steamforged Games. At the time of this Kickstarter, the only Kickstarter they had delivered at the time was Dark something or other. What's it called? I lose my mind here. Dark Souls. They had delivered Dark Souls, and that's the only Kickstarter they had actually delivered at this time. And yet, people continued to back Horizon Zero Dawn, when so far, all they had shown that they could do was produce decent miniatures and subpar gameplay. And then they sat there and did the same thing again. They took another popular PS4 title, another popular game, and they said, we're going to make another Kickstarter. And we're going to show you these incredible miniatures, and we're going to show you gameplay that looks pretty subpar. Overall, the gameplay videos did not look interesting. The decisions you were making did not look appealing. And yet we have 9,838 backers pledging over £1 million to get this game. And don't get me wrong, I almost backed it too. The miniatures look great. Of course I want to lie to myself, tell myself that this time it'll be different. And maybe it will, by the way. I'm not even here to critique this game. I am here to say that backing Horizon Zero Dawn after Dark Souls, after the experience that was Dark Souls, I mean, you'll get pretty miniatures, that's probably true. But the actual gameplay was in no way delivered on in Dark Souls. And you are taking a risk, or you were taking a risk, if you decided to jump in on Horizon Zero Dawn after their experience. Steamforged Games in general has had a bit of a checkered past, putting out a lot of games that they get a lot of funding. They seem to do phenomenally well, but they don't yet have a track record of producing games that people really genuinely like. And that does make it an interesting choice to back, and a risk for sure. And next up from there we have Stormsunder Heirs of Ruin, which I did back. And in fact, I'll have a Pledge Manager video on this one coming up soon as well to go through the Pledge Manager and explain to you how you should spend your money on the game that I'm about to tell you why you shouldn't have backed it, and why I did. And the reason you shouldn't have backed this is Stormsunder Heirs of Ruin is the second Kickstarter from Lazy Squire Games. And Lazy Squire Games put out Wild Ascent and then Stormsunder. And Wild Ascent is unfortunately fairly delayed. Pretty delayed, even by the standards of Kickstarter, it's pretty delayed. It looks beautiful, it looks amazing. I can't wait to get that game. I backed that one too. But it's pretty delayed. And then they put out Stormsunder, a gigantic $500 price tag game, or $450 price tag game, but plus more in the Pledge Manager, even while their first Kickstarter isn't yet delivered. If that's not a warning sign not to back it, I don't know what it is. So why did I back it? Why did I still back this game after, well, the genuine warning signs I'm telling you? And to be clear, the reasons I give don't distract from the fact that, yeah, it's still a flag, for sure. But in the end, the reason I backed it is also King of Average again. He's actually been instrumental in, I guess, 2 of these games so far. And that is that they put out the game, and they gave it to King of Average. And King of Average, again, seemed to love the game, despite being someone who's very critiquing of games that have issues, have problems. And if you wanted a way to make a quick buck, if your goal was to simply put out another $450 game just to walk away with people's money, you don't need to make a good game for that. You just need to make miniatures. Why would you go through the time and trouble to actually develop an experience worth playing? And just as importantly, why would you send it to someone who's known for being pretty darn blunt with his feedback? So I think that Stormsunder actually is a good game. I think that Lazy Squire Games actually is a good company. I think that the warning signs are there, but for those reasons, I was still willing to give this one a shot, and I still believe that both of them will live up to some form of amazing experience. What that is, and whether it's amazing for me, is a different conversation entirely. I am totally open to the idea that neither of these are games for me, but I think they'll be pretty deluxe. I think they'll be pretty amazing. I even have some Stormsunder minis on my shelf. I've talked to the creator. So all this stuff I'm saying is, well, I mean, it's true. They are warning flags, but also not at the same time. And from there, next up, we have a trio, a Trial by Trolley, Exploding Kittens, and Throw Burrito. And no, I'm not telling you shouldn't have backed these because they are dumb, terrible party games. Not in the slightest. If these games bring you joy, if they bring you happiness, if in any way you enjoy these experiences, and Trial by Trolley, I almost did back that one, then great. Go for it. Get those games by all means. Enjoy yourself. I am all for the enjoyment of this hobby, and the enjoyment is not defined by what I like versus what you liked. It's literally just defined by enjoyment. Rather, the reasons these fall into this, you should never have backed these games, is pretty much because these games, because of how many people back these games, because you have 55,000 backers, because you have 219,000 backers, because you have 53,000 backers on these games, the aftermarket on these tends to be pretty sucky. These are games that do not hold their value at all. They are cheaper in retail. They are cheaper on the secondary market. When you go on eBay, Board Game Geek, and want to buy someone's deluxe pledge because they realize that they spent a lot of money on a game that didn't ultimately keep them happy for long enough. So these types of games, these style of party games, they tend to do a pretty horrible job holding their value in the aftermarket. And that's why the next time you see one of these, I'm not saying don't get it. I'm just saying you can get it cheaper later. And from there we get to Terraforming Mars Big Box. Terraforming Mars Big Box, another game that I backed. I think I backed like 6 out of these 10 or something like that. Terraforming Mars Big Box is another game that I backed that you should not have. And I don't know why you did, except for the fact that I probably told you to. But it's $200 or $100, but you can go up. You can go all the way up to around $200 for everything or whatnot, for what is not even a game. There's not even a game in that $200 of your pledge. If you went all in on this, you have a nice little insert, you have a giant big box, you have some new deluxe tiles, you have metal cubes. There are any number of things you now have, but not a single one of them is a board game. They are all extras to your board game. So why are you spending $200 on what is effectively modifications or extras or jumps to your board game? I don't understand. I mean, I do understand. I can't say I don't understand. I understand exactly why you're doing it, for the same reason I did it, because you love Terraforming Mars. And you're willing to pay through the nose to improve upon an experience that is that incredible for you. I wouldn't spend $200 for most of my games. Most of my games would not get $200 upgrades because I can't be bothered to try to, well, improve upon them that way. But Terraforming Mars is one of my top, I want to say top 5 by now. And for that, yeah, you pick any of my top 5. You have Blood Rage, Innis, anything in my top 5. And yeah, I'll pay through the nose to make it a better, more deluxe experience. Because I want to. And sometimes I want to. And that's basically Terraforming Mars. From there, number 9 is Hell the Last Saga. Hell the Last Saga by Mythic Games, and this is another one that I backed, which is, again, a problem. Hell the Last Saga is one that Mythic Games is an amazing company. They have Darkest Dungeon coming out soon, and every single game they put out, I am 100% paying attention to be very clear. And I'll probably end up backing Darkest Dungeon. I'll probably end up backing their next thing. I will continuously be on the lookout for what they do, because their games are pretty, they promise things, they are decently rated, and the reason you maybe shouldn't have backed them is because, sadly, unfortunately, they still continue to have, at least, I mean, I can't speak for Darkest Dungeon, and I can't speak for Hell either, but in all their games until now, they continuously have just issues with errata, with rules, with lack of clarity, with inconsistencies, with abilities that aren't defined. They do a great job making games, but they don't do a great job, or at least historically not yet, have not done a great job fine-tuning it to be a really, truly finalized product. It's kind of like the opposite of Wild Descent, although I don't know if Wild Descent will be like this or not, but rather than waiting and pushing it out and being sure that it's good and great and good and great and good and great, they kind of put out half-finished products because it's good enough. And it hasn't worked out well for them historically. It's worked out with a lot of issues, a lot of upset people, a lot of lack of clarity, and a certain degree of lack of confidence. So why did I back this? Because they're still interesting enough. They're still, the overall designs, the overall gameplay is still promising enough that these games do a decent job holding their value. There is always someone else who wants in on that mythic game that they missed. And so I'll keep jumping in because I'll keep hoping that the next one will be the one that I want. The next one will deliver that true promise that I'm really looking forward to. Until now, I've kind of given them up. I've kind of moved past them. Joan of Arc, Reichbusters, I don't know if anything else. I do have some more coming my way, but they're always intriguing. But they need to cross that finish line. And that's why Hell is simultaneously one that you probably shouldn't have backed, and also one that I backed, and I can't really fault you for backing either. And last on the list, you may notice a noticeable company that I'm a big fan of, CMON. And more specifically, this next one that you shouldn't have backed is CMON's next Kickstarter. Not The Last of Us, whatever it is. I don't know if it's going to be The Last of Us or something else. By the way, CMON is bringing The Last of Us to Kickstarter, or to tabletop. I don't know if they said Kickstarter. So in case you didn't hear that, congratulations, you now know that. Fun fact, little plug, we just talked about this in the Weekly Quack, my podcast with Quackalope. Link down below if you want to check that out. But in any case, The Last of Us, or whatever CMON's next Kickstarter is, the reason you shouldn't back it is because of all the issues, all the drama. They have like 10 campaigns in the pipeline. I don't know if it's exactly 10, but they have a lot of campaigns in the pipeline. Eric Lang just stepped down as far as, he's still working relationship, but he just stepped down from their chief game design. They've had rumors of financial drama with all the accounting and the auditing for who knows how long. And then most recently they have these Trudvang delays where they pushed it off by 6 months, 12 months, whatever it is, because it isn't up to snuff. It isn't up to the standard that they expect. And any one of these things on their own shouldn't be a flag. I don't think so, at least. But all of them together, and you have to ask, what's going on at CMON? What's happening there? And should you back their next Kickstarter, or should you just hold off? And don't get me wrong, I love CMON. And CMON, if you're watching this video, I again apologize for my interesting relationship with you, where I'm simultaneously your biggest fan, absolute biggest fan, and also I do stuff like this. But I will be back in the next CMON Kickstarter. To be clear, 100% clear, I still will be. Almost certainly, and I can't see myself stopping until, well, maybe there will be a point when I actually decide to stop, but it's not going to be everything I just told you. And the reason for that is because despite everything I just listed as a flag, despite all that, there still seems to be a lot of reasons to back them. So first of all, the very fact that Sony is still partnering with them, still giving them titles, I don't know whether you should be concerned or I should be concerned, but Sony's not concerned. That should be something, maybe, right? Additionally, CMON continues to deliver the best value Kickstarters out there. There is no company out there that delivers a better value than a CMON Kickstarter in terms of what you get, what the aftermarket cost is, what you otherwise get at retail. And yes, there might one day be a point where I realize that I have 4 Kickstarters in the queue that aren't being delivered by them. But as long as they keep fulfilling, as long as I do keep getting games from them, and every few months I do get a nice box from them, which is a little like, Hanukkah all over again. I could have said Christmas, but I'm Jewish, let's be honest. But yeah, so I will keep backing their games because they continue to give me a good value. And as long as they continue to deliver, to be frank, I'm more concerned about what happens if I lose out on a CMON Kickstarter than I am being concerned about what happens if I lose that Kickstarter entirely. If it doesn't deliver. Both of them are risks, to be sure, but I feel safe. I don't know. Call me a sucker, call me optimistic, call me whatever you want to call me, but I'm still intrigued by everything Command puts out, and despite every single reason I gave you not to back, and they're all legitimate reasons, I will still be backing the next Command Kickstarter. And also expect like 3 videos telling you why, and why you should back, and at what pledge level. I really am a fanboy of Command, despite putting them in this list. I don't know what my relationship with these publishers is like. I really think that sometimes I don't know what's good for myself in this channel. In any case, that is basically the list of the 10 Kickstarters that you should not have backed, and why. Like I said, it's no fun picking Unbroken. It's no fun picking Kickstarters that didn't deliver. That's obvious. Who cares? Of course you shouldn't have backed a Kickstarter that didn't deliver. But sometimes we back other games despite any number of reasons why not. Sometimes we back games because there's too much content. Are you getting 7th Citadel? Why or why not? Sometimes we take risks on companies because we're intrigued enough by the franchise. Horizon Zero Dawn was, I wanted in despite every reason. I held off, but I really wanted in on this Kickstarter. I came very, very close to backing it. I've played the PS4 game and these miniatures looked amazing. Sometimes it was just over-the-top deluxeified experiences like Nemesis and Monumental. And sometimes it's worth paying for those over-the-top deluxeified experiences, whether it's too much game or too many extras for a game. And sometimes we're just hoping that maybe Mythic, or whichever company it is, will finally deliver the experience that we were hoping for, will finally deliver a reason why we continue to back them Kickstarter after Kickstarter. And other times, it's just a Command game. And I like Command games. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments down below which of these you backed, why and why not. Which of these did you not back for specifically the reasons I gave? Were you worried about the publisher? Was it too much for not enough game for too much money? Tell me the reasons why you skipped out on these or the reasons you went ahead anyways. I am always interested in hearing from you. And until next time, have a good one.